together we survive.
Pain as portal. Queer crip magic. Interdependence is power. Welcome to Held Together. I'm Xander Keller, and I'm in my bed, as usual. This bed that has gone from an isolation chamber to a community space. And I want to invite you in. Held Together is an invocation, an exposing, where we literally bring folks into my bed to talk about life inside a care web. A web that includes disability, queerness, sickness, neurodivergence, and the intimate realities of interdependence. I used to try to hold it all together, and now I feel held together. This is a recording from a live Zoom event where I bring a guest into my bed. So you may hear other folks besides me, my guest, and our host, Nora. This is a shortened version of our conversation. To get all of it and the juiciness that can't be shared publicly, go to subscribe.heldtogetherpod.com. There's a free option. Welcome back to Held Together. Today, my acupuncturist, Tom Kirby, joins me in my bedroom for a conversation on unlikely channels: marijuana, needles, pain, and spirit. At first, I did not want to go see a white guy in a tie telling me how to heal. I had had so much of that. Eventually, the pain got bad enough that I went anyway. It wasn't just the needles that changed me. It was the way he listened, the way he showed up as human. In this episode, we get into a lot: addiction, cannabis, chronic pain, allyship, care webs, and what it looks like to move beyond the rigid roles of practitioner and patient, or supporter and supported. Cannabis once felt like a lifeline for me. It helped with pain. It cracked open moments of spirit. But slowly, it started to take more than it gave. I really didn't know how to stop. Tom has become an unlikely channel for me. Not just with acupuncture, but with presence, with respect, with going inside. I'm so glad to share this one with you. I remember when I first came into your office, I was in the process of trying to reconcile my relationship to weed, or to ganja, marijuana. And it was hard for me to talk about, which I think is a sign for me that it was gripping me, because when I can't talk about something, there's probably some big shame or other things that are keeping me from being able to speak to it. And probably for all the reasons we just described for the last 52 minutes, I was able to talk to you about it. And I'm not sure exactly how, but I had talked to other people, and I have other practitioners who've really helped me in my journey around addiction, and especially around marijuana. But the way that you met me in that space was so powerful. And I could imagine if you didn't have JR as your teacher, someone may have said, like, never tell people about your experience, like, because that's a thing in our culture. Like, a practitioner has a boundary, and you are the healer, and they're the one needing healing, and you don't cross any of those lines. You don't share your own stuff, and that happens in a lot of contexts. So earlier when you said you weren't a therapist, I almost wanted to be like, thank God. But only because of my own stigma, because so many therapists have that training where there is no real relational ability, because that's been taught to be wrong, right? And doctor-patient rules of, like, don't relate. And there's so much of that baked into our society that when you shared with me about your experience, I believe that was the thing that tipped me over the edge to be able to actually look at and shift my relationship with marijuana. And I really think it was probably the acupuncture helped too. But I really think it was because you were honest with me about your own experience. And you know, so often there's that notion like, oh, you can't live through someone else, like you have to live it yourself. But sometimes we can pave the way. And I feel like you helped me learn through you in ways that would have taken me a lot longer if you hadn't have been so generous with your experience.
Oh, goodness. I'm so glad to hear that. I was talking with a client earlier today, and, I said, I'm sharing these things because what took me 20 years to, the very first acupuncture treatment I had, I got off the table and I felt this deep sense of peace like I'm serious, never had before. Age 25. I'm like, what is this? It was so unfamiliar. I didn't know it. And then it really took me 20 years. 10 years later is when I decided I want to quit smoking weed. And another decade later, and I did. I didn't smoke weed at all for a decade then. And then I did some more for a while again, but I did it also in a kind of from a different space because I was consciously using it as a crutch rather than unconsciously trying to. I'm not saying either one is better than the other, it's just where I was at. But after 20 years, I started thinking about, I'm like, the best things in my life all have kind of a central axis of being at ease in myself, being at peace. Why not just go for that as the principal focus and work on and practice developing that and see what comes of that rather than sending my energy scattered 100 different directions. And that's part of why I share, the hardships and all the beating my head against the wall that I've done in my life and all the ended up flat on my face or on my butt once again. And if I can share that with somebody and it helps you kind of perceive like, oh, hey, this is looking like a slippery slope. This kind of reminds me of that conversation we had. Maybe I had to make a turn here, you know, fantastic. If what took me 20 years to start coming around to really want to nurture like never before, you can do in, a couple months, go for it, please. Because that's what the world needs, healthier people and people who are, you know, the whole of who they are too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when you were talking earlier about feeling in particular, that and patriarchy and whatnot, I read at the behest of a couples counselor that my former wife and I went to for 20 years. We both adored and still do adore this guy, but he had me read this book by Terrence Real, and Terrence Real is a therapist who stands on the shoulders of feminist giants, Pia Melody, sorry, I'm sorry, I'm not sure which it is, but Gloria Steinem. Gosh, it's been a while since I looked into that, but Terrence, pointed out that the real tragedy of patriarchy is that men are taught not to feel and be emotive, and what do we get labeled if we are empathetic and that sort of thing, and women don't get to have a voice, and we all need all of that. We all need to be as whole as we can be. So, if sharing what I do helps you to be more whole, to get through your difficulties, that much more readily, then I'm all for it. And I tell people every day too that, if what I'm sharing isn't of value, there's a trash can. You can put it there. I don't have any attachment to it. I just want to see people as well as they can be.
Yeah.
Was there a turning point for you where at some point you saw cannabis as medicine, and do you still see that as a potential for people with certain circumstances, certain people?
Absolutely. There's no hard and fast edge to it. I mean, there are all sorts of exceptions in life, and you know, I just want to look at it as wholly as I can. And I look at it. My perspective is from a perspective of addiction, because I absolutely abused and was addicted to weed, and um, I know what that sort of ground that set in my life, and I just don't like that, because it totally detracts from the ease that I've done my best to cultivate. But there's a time and a place for everything, and um, yeah, I'm not here to tell people not to smoke weed or to smoke weed, but I will share with you that for me personally, it has been. It, it was initially something which, when I started smoking weed and used it regularly, chronically, um, it was the only way I could feel good. And feeling good was a big step forward, and it felt like a relief. And I felt like I had insights and perceptions that really were good growth. Um, but then I reached a point where it was anything but a growth provoking substance. It was absolutely impeding me. And also, from my point of view as an acupuncturist and what it does to us, it kind of puts a cap on how much we can experience the depth of our own inner resources.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that question, Nora, because I feel like weed and whatever, I was gifted a reframe around that language, that weed is maybe a problematic word. I'm trying to remember why. Oh, just because we associate weeds as bad in our culture, and maybe weed isn't a good word. I'll have to remember why. But marijuana um, has saved me and has pulled me through times that I might not have made it through, or that I might have needed other really side effect laden pain meds and drugs. That marijuana is like definitely the choice. And so it's hard for me. For me, it's not marijuana that's a problem. I still think marijuana is definitely one of God's creations. Like, it is an amazing plant, and hemp and everything about it is so incredible. And it activates the addictive part. Or it I don't know that it activates it, but my addictive brain has a relationship to that plant that can get activated, and it almost doesn't matter if it's marijuana, if it's sugar, if it's social media, if it's other stuff that I can't think of in this moment, but there's a way that my mind can just start, like, having this dopamine seeking, like, obsession that doesn't feel good in my body. So I don't wanna demonize the substance or the
Yeah.
experience, because it can also happen for me with exercising, which used to be a big part of my life, and with food and binging and fasting and then exercising, that was a really big part of my life. And that was also a really interesting kind of side note around being so sick that I couldn't exercise in the same way, really had me having to look at things. And I think weed also became kind of a filler for not being able to self-medicate through extreme sports and
Mm.
athleticism. Yeah, it's not that marijuana is a problem for in my mind, it's that the way that my body and soul relates to it, at least in this part of phase of my life, I don't feel like it serves me. And for me, I believe that marijuana saved me, and it also kept me in a pretty toxic, abusive relationship because I was complacent. Because marijuana can make me feel good even when I'm not doing well.
Wow.
And in a survival state, that's really important to be able to make it through. And so I think and you said it even as a crutch, which is maybe another interesting language thing, but crutches are amazing. I have gone many years using crutches and like so grateful. And they kink my whole body. It's part of why I'm crooked right now because I've been on crutches so long. And I don't want to be complacent in my life if I don't have to be. And I also recognize that there are a lot of reasons and a lot of circumstances and a lot of people where we need that in order to keep going.
Yeah.
And for me, I feel even nervous or uncomfortable talking about it because I know that it's a lot of resource privilege and access that allows me to not need marijuana right now. And that is, I know, not available for so many folks.
I know, tragically so.
Yeah. And thank goodness for marijuana because it helps us be okay when we're not okay. And that's really important. And also, it helps us be okay when we're not okay, which means we can stay in situations that are not okay for a long time. And we can keep ourselves from launching or living because it's kind of like, oh, we're okay. And so I think for me, it's just, it's not so cut and dry.
Oh, definitely not.
And yeah, I'm still kind of I don't feel like I'm done with that relationship or that exploration. And it feels nervous to talk about because I'm like, what if I start smoking again? And to be honest, I have a few times in this period of not, like in the last 3 years or whatever. I have a few times. And a few times did not trigger my addictive brain. It was a fine thing.
Yeah.
A few times it did. And I'm also really curious about why and when. And there's so much there for me that I'm still in the process of uncovering. And I feel like talking about is important because anything that I'm hiding from myself or from other people means there's something that it's got a grip on me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, goodness. Well said all around. Thank you for all the things you just said, because I think you captured the bulk of everything I feel about it, what you said.
Xander, I'm really curious if there was anything that just really worked about Tom's invitation for you to take a look at it possibly being an addiction for you that helped you address it.
Well, I do want to give credit to Heather Wright, who's another one of my care webbers and healers. She planted this seed years and years and years ago for me about marijuana. Back when I was like, no, I got medical, like this is my medicine. And it was. And she was like, yeah, but also you're coming to me for trauma and nervous system healing. And weed dampens your sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight that you have been stuck in. And so it feels really good to turn that system off or down. But you need your sympathetic nervous system to mobilize in order to move through trauma. And she was very clear about that for me for a long time, which is why I knew I wanted to try. And I kept trying and trying and trying, but I wasn't ready. Like my system wasn't able to handle that nervous system surge of sympathetic tone that was just so intense. And the anxiety and the panic and the dysregulation and overstimulation and overwhelm was too much for me to handle. Like I needed soothing, and weed is a soother for me. And so the Heather Wright combo plus Tom was like a really good, and other people in my life who were really important, so many people, in helping me find other ways of soothing and also helping me be okay in those states that I didn't need to just numb it out or stuff it down. Like I could have big feelings, big cries, big shakes, need to be laid on and all, so many things that allow me to be like, how do I be with this? This has been suppressed for decades. How am I going to allow this amount of sympathetic nervous system to flow through my body? And for folks who don't know about sympathetic, we have parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic is the kind that allows you to rest and digest and relax. It's like when we're safe. And sympathetic is fight, flight, freeze, fawn, that state of like, I'm not safe, I'm hypervigilant, and there's all these different ways that we can respond. So pleasing and fawning is one of my go-to trauma responses when I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel safe. So it doesn't look like I'm in a trauma response because it looks like I'm just being really friendly,
Mm-hmm.
which is a really great disguise and a very helpful response because that actually works really well to just please everybody and be
Mm-hmm.
pleasing to
Mm-hmm.
everyone. That is a safety mechanism like no other.
Mm-hmm.
If everyone loves me, I'm good. And that doesn't mean I'm not in a trauma state when I'm doing that. And so yeah, Heather plus Tom plus some loved ones who have really grounded presence and were able to allow me to have surges of energy and fear and anxiety and other stuff come through. Was kind of a perfect storm in the positive way that helped me. And probably acupuncture too, like helping my system and the channels that needed to be open, and the ones that were blocked, or the ones that needed to like chill out, and the fire that needed to kind of find the ground and the earth. I think all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting the words you just used because, 5-element acupuncture, and you had, when you first came in, you had a lot of these, what we would characterize as fire aspects going strong. And I was actually saying, where do we need to focus treatment here? And that one was kind of throwing me for a bit, but I didn't buy it. I thought it was just a secondary thing. And I want to give credit and thanks to Heather too, because she's fantastic. And I'm so glad she was helpful for you in that regard. She's been helpful for me too.
I don't want this podcast to just show a care web. I want it to be one. We're building it as we go. And I honestly still don't fully know what a care web is. But I'm really into dreaming into it with you. If you want to be part of it, DM me at Xander Pierre Keller on Instagram or TikTok, or email heldtogetherpod@gmail.com. Finding my voice through song has been a big part of my journey. I knew there needed to be held together music, so I sent some voice memos to my friend Ember Bradbury. She responded with the first of many held together songs, the one we're singing here. Find her as Sirona Isle. Stay tender, stay tangled, stay held together.
Held together we survive, held together we nourish, held together we thrive, held together we flourish, held together